5, 4.
Hi, good.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Paul. How are you?
What the fuck? Hello, everybody, and welcome to another E5 podcast. I'm your host, Paul Mean, and today I've got a very special guest. I'm actually going to call him a good friend, known him for a number of years, and he works in a different industry. Introduce yourself, please, sir.
Hi, Paul. It's Bidhen here from Solaris Lighting. I'm the customer development uh, agent for Solaris. We're basically a lighting company. We've been doing lighting for almost now 7 years, mainly looking after our client base in the UK, in the rail, hospitality, airports, roadway lighting, you name it. That's what we do here at Solaris Lighting.
So that's fair to say then that I know you and you know me.
Yeah,
For those listening, because obviously those listening and those watching will go, who is this guy? So thanks for answering my question before I got to answer. Was introduce yourself and tell us who you work for. So it's Bidhen Brambat, Solaris Lighting, and what's your role again? Sorry,
a business development manager.
business development manager. Okay, so you're the business development manager for Solaris Lighting. The company have been running for 7 years.
Correct.
So obviously you specialise in lighting.
Correct.
So for everyone listening, this is going to be the first of many on the lighting industry, because I'm working on some emergency lighting stuff. It's fair to say that's where we got to know each other, via the lighting industry. So Bidhen is one of our first victims. No, he's not a victim, is he? He's a manufacturer, supplier of luminaires. In fairness, and I have to be honest, you are definitely one of the better ones. Why don't you just tell everybody how we met and stuff, and how you know me and I know you, and why you've ended up here?
Interesting. Many years ago, we were looking to, get into the rail industry with our LED lighting, mainly retrofit solution. And at that time, I approached you to see if there was any requirement for retrofitting any of your light fittings, rather than going and buying, a brand new spanking luminaire, which is going to cost you an arm and a leg, where you can use the existing luminaire, just get it cleaned up, retrofit it, and still work for another 5 to 10 years without any issues. And you had a challenging issue at one of your depots, where you were looking for some emergency lighting with a LED, with a LED element to it. And that was the first time we ever met each other, and we took upon ourselves to see how we can assist you when you were with DLR at that time. If I'm not wrong.
I think he was right. I think the first time you rung me, you got my number from some chats in tube lines, if I remember rightly. Because I was on I was working for Transport for London. I was on the working group for the early stages of ProLight, which was the standardization. It was an asset management activity for those who have listened to our asset management podcast. And we were looking, because the DLR was 30 years old, we were looking to do a life cycle replacement, or it may have been cheaper to just do an enhancement, a refurbishment, for want of a better term, to extend that life by a further 10, 15 years. And we had a major challenge at a depot. I'm not going to name that depot, but it's fairly evident which one it is. We had a major challenge where we had the depot non-compliant emergency lighting in the pits, and we had the main contractor who was doing the work, because it was a depot extension. They had procured some lighting for the pits. They were these cylindrical circle tubes.
Correct.
That went into in between the upstands for the train, because the men could work under the train. And I remember I got my grubby paws on that project and ended up living there for quite some time, trying to make sure it was compliant, and the contractors and the management were all being glued together, which never really happens a lot. And we had no emergency lighting, which immediately the maintainer of said systems and the user are going to say, well, I'm not working there. How can you validate it's safe? So that was when I approached you and said, look, the company that make these don't do an emergency lighting option, and they're French, and you're a UK company. Can you give me a solution? And I think it's fair to say you knocked the ball out of the park, because And we're not going to go through the ins and outs of that story, but long and short of it, we were the first people ever to put lithium-ion central battery pack fittings on a railway, and they still work to this day.
Absolutely.
They have not failed, which is incredible, considering that I remember when they were installed, I remember walking through the pits and all of these tubular fittings were red hot, but you guys had designed yours with a heat sink, which was incredible considering they were like a transparent perspex, but a frosted one, and your heat sink wasn't even visible, and your luminaire was the only one that was cool, and that had lithium ion in it and LED. Correct. It was mind blowing. Honestly, it blew me away. And we went on a long, difficult technical journey of assurance, which we ended up flying abroad and doing all sorts of stuff. And it was good. It was good. And that's kind of the first time we met each other, really, wasn't it?
Correct. Yes, absolutely, Paul. That was the first time we met each other. And then from there, we went off to, looking at, the handrail was the second thing that came onto the table. Mm-hmm. You were looking at that time, looking for illuminated handrail once again for DLR, mainly because there was a cost element involved in there. What the market was offering was way too high. As a client, you knew what you were looking to procure the handrail at, and you had a pretty good idea that you could have that handrail made at a high standard and still, be affordable at the same time.
Is it fair to say that because a lot of people listening to this won't realise, but I think the running rate for a luminaire, let's say a 5-foot IK10 IP65 solid heavy steel box luminaire, the running rate for one of them used to be between £800 and £1,400 per luminaire on the railways. That's what they were. I genuinely do think it was a complete rip-off. I still, to this day, think that is an unjustified price. I know, and we'll go through it in a minute, all of the assurance that you have to do with a luminaire and a light before it comes to market, and there's capital costs that have to be reclaimed. But when you're selling thousands of them to the rail industry, thousands, the cost is reclaimed pretty darn quick. And this whole bulk buy discount stuff immediately proves that there's a level of disingenuous behavior from some of the manufacturers. So we went and looked. Well, I went and looked at handrails, and all I saw was thousands of pounds per meter. And I thought, yeah, fair enough, because it's a handrail, so it's a premises, it's a piece of physical structural steelwork that has to have a loading on it and all the rest of it. And when you introduce electrical systems into a handrail, it makes it more complex. And we actually, I think I asked you about whether or not it could be done, and then we went back and forth, it's fair to say, with ideas for producing something that was far superior. So, Sharps proof, one of the criteria. And one of the key things was nobody should be able to insert a needle or a razor blade. So a passenger, when they put the hand on the handrail, they don't get cut. And we looked at every single option, and we went to lots of different manufacturers, and we learnt a lot about the ethics and the behaviors of a lot of organizations and companies. But one thing I liked was we kind of just ignored them and moved past to trying to find a good, robust product done the right way for good value. Everybody makes their money, but the client, the end user, gets value as well. And that for me was it was a learning journey, wasn't it? Really, I don't know about you.
Well, it was. I mean, what people seem to forget, Paul, is that at the end of the day, it's the taxpayers who's paying for all this. It's coming out from mine and your pockets.
Trust me, I never forget. Never forget. Everything's tax or fair payer money.
And a lot of people don't seem to, they think that just because they're running the railways, okay, you know what, we can print money. It's not the case. It's the taxpayers paying for it. It's not a private sector.
I don't think the railway will ever say that they print money. I think it's fair to say sometimes it's an unknown quantity. If you think of a project manager who may be in charge of a £5 million job, and all he cares about is risk, program dates, and keeping within the major budget. And if the lighting guy comes in and says, well, it is what it is, otherwise you're not going to meet your program dates, then the project manager is going to say, yeah, okay, fine. He hasn't got time to argue. He hasn't got time to shop around because he's expecting contractors to do all that. So it's not that they've got money to burn. I just think the rail industry hasn't been robust enough potentially in challenging and demanding value from the suppliers. The suppliers will always say there's value in it. And I would ask for it to be proved, because if a manufacturer said to me, oh, well, it's compliant from a photometry. Well, yeah, you're required to before it goes on the market. Oh, yeah, but it's got an IK rating, which is the impact protection, baseball bats, people vandalizing. Well, yeah, you're kind of required to select and erect your electrical installation so that it is suitable for its intended use. That's in the wiring regs. Oh, yeah, but, we've got a 10-year warranty on our LEDs. Yeah, well, whoever claims on these LED warranties, and let's be perfectly frank, a lot of the old stuff that was being installed over 5 years ago has been ripped out and replaced with warmer LED, less harsh, more diffusing, so a lot of them warranties have been proven just unfounded, really.
Well, I mean, look, I think the warranty aspect is, or even the IK, you hear a lot of manufacturers out there will say, oh, our product is IK 18 and 19 and 20 or whatever it is. I mean, look, the norm within the standard is IK 10 as far as, when it comes to such harsh environment like the railways. We could go around saying it's a marketing ploy by a lot of manufacturers, and by that marketing ploy, they are there to hype up the price of that product. And that's
I'll tell you what it is. I'll tell you what it actually is. So I did a bit of research on this. So I looked up the standards for IK ratings and what it is, because I was like you, totally cynical. When something new comes out, you always trust but verify it. Yeah, I've always said trust but verify. And I found one manufacturer saying we're IK 12 or IK 14. I was like, but the standard only goes to IK 10. So how have you done that? And I actually spoke to one of their engineers, and there is like a chart, like almost a time current curve chart, but for impact in joules. And what they've actually done is they've looked at this chart, mapped out the chart, and they've gone past where the standard ends. So they've looked at how much energy would it be required for an IK. We know what it is at IK 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. How much energy would be discharged to make an IK 12 rating? 14. And that's what they've done. They've actually developed it from the standards, but IK 10 was supposed to be the nuts, the bee's knee. So if you're going to go IK 14, unless you're using some sort of specially developed polymer or some sort of plastic that's super tough, I still don't see where they call. I mean, the former chief engineer of London Underground said, all I want is a metal box. I want a metal box. You know what I'm talking about. A metal box, and I put a driver in it, and I put some cables, and I put some tubes in it, and that's it. Okay. And in 30 years' time, the metal box should be fine. I can take them old bits out and put some new bit in. That's it. I don't want to be replacing all these boxes.
Absolutely. Every 30 years. Absolutely. That's how it should be. Honestly speaking, that's how it should be, because, there is a life. The metal box has a life. It may be for 20, 30, 40 years, because it's probably made of aluminium or cast iron, and it's got a life to it. The diffuser probably has a life as well for a long period of time, unless it's been a very harsh environment. All you need to do, bottom line is, all you want to do is just change the light bulb. In layman's terms.
All the LED gear tray, as we know.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, it's still the light bulb that you're changing. LED gear tray or light bulb, it's the same thing. Only difference is, Paul, it's the way it's been made. But the way we speak in industry, that's what the client wants to do, and that's how we wanted to build our products as well, to make sure that it's versatile, that the client still has that luminaire still there, and all he or she has to do is just replace the internal grubbings, which is your driver and your gear tray, because the gear trays are always, the technology in the gear trays and drivers is every 2-3 years they're improving and getting better and better.
So I've actually got a good story on that, that I'm quite happy to say on this now that I don't work there anymore. But tell me about a story that you could. Well, tell everyone a story about the journey you've gone on when developing a light fitting.
We were. If you recall, you were talking about Pro Light, if you remember, and
yes,
you were involved. Yeah. You were one of the guys who were involved in the Pro Light.
So, just for everyone listening, Pro Light was a Transport for London initiative where, rather than having 500 different types of lights, they would turn around and say, as an organisation, we would like in all the ticket halls 5 different types of luminaires to pick from. In all of the switch rooms, we'd like 5 different types of emergency lighting. We'd like 5 different types. We'd like 5 different types of ceiling lights, for our offices in our back of house. And well, what that did was that massively reduced the number of spares you had to hold. Because remember, London Underground 24/7 now, the volume of spares, there is a warehouse in Acton, which is just shelves and shelves and shelves of luminaires. They've even got heritage luminaire systems installed in the 30s, which they have to retrofit because they're listed. The chassis and the carcass is actually part of the listing. So it's really, really complex, and lighting is a massive outgoing resource as far cost as far as energy efficiency, cost to run, cost to maintain. So the ProLight was an asset management whole life cost approach. It confused a lot of people because they weren't used to thinking of whole life cost. I got it straight away, and I asked when we formed the committee, I said to them, if you're going to approve a light fitting, you need to understand what an approval is. So I said, what is a current London Underground approval? And their words to me was fire performance, which is the 1085 standard. And the other one is EMC compliance. If you have fire performance compliance, EMC compliance, and all of your relevant photometry data, you can have an approved product. Now, you kind of should be doing all of that anyway, except for the fire one, because that's LUL's enhanced standard. So you'd have to send the luminaire away and have that set fire to and measured to the LUL standard. But if you got that, you could pretty much claim advanced compliance with fire above any other standard, because the LUL standard was the highest. So I asked the dumb question, but why would you approve a fitting if it can't be maintained by a human being? Sparks. Why can't, if a Sparks can't maintain it? So we made that part of the criteria, the third criteria. And we had all of the lights. We wrote loads of documents and did all the usual stuff. But when we got the luminaires from around the world, I was in Acton Signal House, penknife screwdriver, open up lights, hitting them with a hammer. Some of them were just awful that was sent to us. Prototypes were being sent to us and all sorts of rubbish. But it was fascinating because the managers of the ProLight project hadn't seen the practical side that electricians have to go through. So me and the London Underground guy, because DLR were going to adopt that, obviously, we're all part of the same family. We were, playing away and going, well, this isn't maintainable, this isn't maintainable. And we were either passing or rejecting them. And it was really interesting. So that's ProLight for anyone listening. Anyway, carry on.
So within the ProLight listing, one of the products was a bulkhead light, which they, which London Underground was looking to procure. So we sat down with yourself, if you remember, to see. We already had a bulkhead light, the Titan, and it does exactly what it says on the box, on the lid. It's maintainable. It's got a life cost to it. All you need to do is change the gear trays in the future, or the driver in the future. It was very user friendly. Couple of things that we were, a couple of inputs that you had given to us, and it was really helpful. One was, if you're up 3 meters up in the air, or 6 meters up in the air, and you're trying to take the lid off of a bulkhead light, and you're trying to fiddle yourself, you got your tools in your hand, how do you make a life easier for a contractor or a maintainer? So one of the things that was brought to our attention was to put a security chain on it, so that once the lid comes off, it just hangs there, so that the contractor or the maintainer can go and do what he or she needs to do. The same goes with even the gear tray. It kind of folded out so that it doesn't drop anywhere. The screws were make sure the screws were staying in place, that they're not falling all over the place, and the contractor, the maintainer has to start looking for the screw. So there was a lot of small things. It was very small. The small things were the most important things that we felt that, we could do that without any problem, and still keeping the cost, affordable. The best thing was, it was about affordability, having a high-end product at affordable price. That was our motto, and that's still our motto. It's about durability. It's about, making sure that it does the job that the client is looking to do. There was various tests we had to make sure. We had to go through the IK test, the IP rating. We had to go through all the LU requirements to make sure that it ticked all the right boxes. So there was a traceability as well, because you need to know where if there is a fire, you need to make sure that you have a traceability within your
So I've seen this fitting. What Bidhen is rambling about in his weird lighting speak is that you guys effectively developed a standard, like what we know in the trade is like a 2D bulkhead luminaire.
Correct.
Basically, but you obviously did an LED equivalent.
Yeah.
You made it available in different color temperatures.
Correct.
Which was very important. You used, because I've seen this luminaire and it's mind blowing, because the first thing that happens when you plug it in is you don't know it's LED.
Yes.
And that's because of the optics. That plastic polycarbonate diffuser, the manufacturer did something in a way where he effectively molded a pattern that effectively refracted the light in a manner where you couldn't actually see any chips it just beautifully diffused light in all directions. You also made sure that the gear tray, if I remember rightly, there was the chain, there was the one screw, and you can take the gear tray out, which was a brilliant idea. But the one thing that I don't think you mentioned, which for me was the most important thing, operations and maintenance now for Sparks is a nightmare, because they're all using digital tablets and they're hoping that they've got the latest paperwork. And one of the things that you guys did in the luminaire was you put a QR code,
correct, yes,
into the luminaire. And I remember this very clearly, because basically this is the only luminaire where I've seen where you open up the luminaire, you scan the QR code, and it takes you to YouTube, and the guy who designed it is there showing you how to do the maintenance.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Now I think you put it on a data sheet as well, but
yes,
that was just off the charts cool. That was proper cool, man.
And also the other thing the other input that we got from you guys was that you wanted to it should be a plug and play again. You know, the wires should just, it shouldn't take a maintainer more than 5 or 10 minutes maximum to do what he or she needs to do.
And that's why we effectively use like Wago connectors, isn't it? The spring-loaded lever type connector. Rather than a Spark having to worry about using his terminal, it should be a matter of I can easily disconnect the levers, I can unplug the cable, but more importantly, when the cables are unplugged, you don't lose which ones are what, because a lot of the cabling is obviously positive and negative DC, so you know exactly what you're replacing quickly, easily. For me, it was a common sense luminaire, to say the least. What happened to that luminaire? Just
well, it's still since then. I mean, it's already gone out. You know, we are putting in a number of local authorities, housing associations are putting those luminaires in. The other thing also, we moved one step ahead. We've also included self-testing as well, because that was the new standard that came just recently. I'm sure you may have know about it, Paul. That since Grenfell, self-testing has come about. So rather than having just an emergency light fitting, all the guy has to do is just walk down the aisle, and he can self-test the lighting without any complications.
So this is smart lighting, isn't it? This is
correct.
Self-testing luminaires. So just for those listening, if you're wondering, because some people might, there is particular requirements for certain luminaires. But when we talk about self-testing, then we're talking about emergency luminaires. And the standard 60598-2-22, which I've said so many times in my life, is mind-blowing. It's the particular requirements for emergency lighting. And that's the one which, when everyone says, oh, what colour should the LED be? Or why is there an LED in this? And what does it indicate? And all the rest of it. That's the minimum standard. But the Internet of Things, smart controls, smart drivers now that can effectively simulate a mains loss, switch out the mains, allow the battery to drain off for an hour or 3 hours, and then effectively can give you an LED flash that says, I've done this, it's fine, it works, everything's fine. That I find mind-blowing. I believe the ones at Bidhen were completely self-testing.
Correct.
And the LED was a different color as well, depending on if it failed, it was red. If it was discharging in the middle of the test and you looked at it, it was amber. And if everything was fine, it had been done, it was green.
Correct.
So you just look round, you basically walk through your sites and just go, right, red, amber, green. If it's all green, great. If it's amber, come back and have a look in a bit. If it's red, get someone out.
Get it
so simple.
It is.
Simple.
It is.
So a lot of people listening to this are going to go, oh, where do I get that from and what's it called? So do you want to, this is not an advert, by the way, but it is a pucker fitting. Do you want to tell everyone what the name of the luminaire is and where they may be?
The name of the luminaire is the Titan.
So whereabouts, because they will be asking, whereabouts can we get this luminaire? Because it's a good, I've seen it, it's a good luminaire, but the people listening or watching may wonder where they can purchase one from. So where can we get it from?
We do supply it directly to Travis Perkins,
Great.
who's our
TPs.
yeah, they're our authorized stockist, or they can place their orders directly to me at Solaris Lighting.
Well, what we'll do is we'll put your contacts in the bottom of the YouTube. So if anyone wants to get in touch directly with Bidhen, if you go on YouTube and click the bit on the bottom on the description, what we'll do is we'll put a link. We'll put Bidhen. We'll put your contact information. Can we put the link? I don't know if we can. Can we put the link to the YouTube video for the maintenance instructions so people can see it? Maybe.
Yes.
Great, we'll do that as well so that you guys can see it for yourself and actually see it in anger as well, because it's a luminaire that's, well, there's millions of them around the country. Okay, so you obviously supply, we know you supply and manufacture luminaires, bespoke solutions. You're actually listening to your clients, which is good. And I have to say, one of the things you're very good at is just being a human being before a salesman and a robot. You work in the lighting industry as I do. We're both members of the Institute of Lighting Professionals,
Correct.
which is a really nice small institute, and they're really kind, friendly people. Some are a bit eclectic, but we've been to quite a few lighting events over the years where we keep bumping into each other. There were the Lux ones where I used to do some of my talks on lighting and railway lighting, and then the ILP do their technical evenings where everyone goes for a beer, and then we do papers and stuff. What do you think, in your experience, are the good and the bad parts of being a lighting manufacturer, supplier, in general? And we can expand it to the construction industry, but tell us, go for it.
The good, I would say, you know what? There are a lot of people out there who understands about, you know, the high end products. You know, they're looking at a good product, a high end manufactured product, a British product. You know, I need to emphasize that, Paul, because we are a British manufacturer when it comes to some of our products. Yes, we do also buy from Europe, but as due to, you know, the Brexit, we've kind of moved a lot of our production manufacturing away from Europe and brought it to UK. So we're having some of our products manufactured up in Oldham. A fantastic, you know, a factory out in Oldham who does a lot of our luminaires, our gear trays, and so on and so forth. Some of our handrails and the bulkhead lights are manufactured in our factory down in Somerset, which I'm sure I know that you've been down there and had a look at them as well. So yeah, there's a lot of young, very open thinking young guys out there, you know, who I'm working with, which I know you've met them, met a couple of the guys at the Lux Live Awards. They were there.
Yeah, it's fair to say, if you don't mind me interjecting. So I am the world's biggest cynic when it comes to lighting manufacturers and suppliers. Again, the trust but verify stuff. I did go down to the factory in Somerset, because anyone listening to this knows I constantly say buy British, invest in Britain, invest in apprenticeships, invest in British manufacturing, British materials, British everything we can. Obviously, we're not ignorant to the fact that some stuff we have to buy and some stuff is made abroad, obviously, but where we can, make the effort. And I went down to that one, and they were really good. And I have to say, their factory, from an assurance perspective, was mint. It was a very well run, tidy, clean, happy factory, happy workforce. And the product, you could see the care and the quality that went into it. And I don't see that when I go down and do factory acceptance testing or factory, you know, looking at the manufacturing process. Sometimes you don't see that. Sometimes you'll sit on a factory test and just put your hands in your head and just go, oh God, it's going to be a hard day. That definitely wasn't. It was a long old journey, but it wasn't hard. It was quite enjoyable, because it's all the passion and the pride in the product. And that came across, which was really cool. But anyway, sorry, please carry on.
And I'm sure you must have met Max and Will down there, the young guys who are running the factory down in Somerset. I mean, these are the kind of young people I love working with. You know, they're very, you know, forward way of thinking. You know, they bring new ideas to the table. They're not
they're not stuck in the Stone Ages like so many light manufacturers are.
Exactly. And they're not, just because they everyone keeps on saying the terminology I keep on hearing in my industry. Well, why reinvent the wheel? Well, we're not reinventing the wheel. We're just making that wheel even better, even smarter, even faster, even last longer. That's what we're doing.
I think the lighting industry, since LED has come out, has gone from the wheel to the hexagon and made a very bumpy ride for everyone involved. Because LED was the next great white hope, and LED has turned out to be the great next Titanic. I mean, do you remember? So, just for those listening, I try and do as much CPD on lighting. I don't profess to be a world-class lighting engineer because I'm not constantly developing that competence. Do you know what I mean? I'm not constantly in anger doing lighting design and stuff. But I am reviewing and checking and all the rest of it and doing CPD. And one of the CPD events I did was at the Institute of Physics. You know what I was talking about.
Yes.
And it was it was a lighting, and it was all about something called circadian issues and blue light effects and all the rest of it. And basically they were explaining next level stuff. It was above my head. It was definitely above your head. And eventually we got to this guy who was like teaching it. And I remember saying to him, so you're saying LED is a potential health hazard, but why isn't there standards that, identify this, make it more robust? And he literally said, because there's not enough research being done, which was frightening. I mean, what was your take on that day, actually?
Well, there's a lot of, especially, when there was the gentleman was talking about different colors, how color affects, the blues and the how the LED is affecting people, not only people, but also the environment around us, animals and so on and so forth. So that was quite hard hitting. There was some, eye-opening papers that was read out that a person who's like me, who's in the lighting industry, needs to take that on board, because at the end of the day, this planet is not only it's not only ours. There are other, creatures and animals that live on this planet who have the same rights as we do. So yes, we need to be very aware of that. It is very conscious on our mind on how, whenever we design or develop a new luminaire, and as you said, LED was supposed to be the all that be it. But of course, there's been some horror stories on when it's come to LEDs. The reason is because, you know what, Paul, people are not listening to what the clients are saying. People are not listening to what the scientists are saying. People are not listening to what Joe Public is saying. We need to listen to everyone and get everyone involved in and see how we as industry and lighting industry can improve and make things better. And that's the only way we can move forward.
Yeah, it's fairly evident. I mean, one thing I got out of that was basically there are actually safety standards for LED based products. And those safety standards, just for the avoidance of doubt for everyone listening, BSEN IEC 62471, and it's basically photobiological safety, which is protection of the eye. And I remember this guy telling us, look, that LED, when it was first invented, was basically birthed from lasers, and the energy used for lasers, and low enough energy, you'd produce light, etc. But it was far more focused, far more harsh light source. And I remember he was saying about anything that is sold that is effectively a light source should conform with IEC 62471. And then we were like, well, hang on, what about those Motorola goggles? And do you remember what he said? He said, do you think they've got photobiological safety certificate? And I was like, I don't know. And he went, no, they don't. I said, so why are they selling them? And that's the trouble. Manufacturers, and this is what I found in the lighting industry alone. I have been to some of the major light, I've said this before in podcast, some of the biggest light manufacturers in the country, and I've gone, please can you give me your EMC declaration, your technical, used to be called technical construction file, now it's just called technical file, that gives me all your all of your photometry, your photometric data, and they can't give it, or they try and excuse themselves, say, oh, it's data protection, I can't give it to you, GDPR. And you go, okay, I'll sign an NDA, but still show it to me. And the amount of major manufacturers that would produce luminaires where tens of thousands were sold, and yet they had no paperwork and would get incredibly annoyed. But their view was, well, there's not really many sent back, so what's the problem? So they weren't doing the due diligence.
No.
And that's the trouble with LED. You're right. But I mean, on the journey of lighting that I've learned is different color, not color temperatures, but different colors can affect So if anyone's listening, I strongly recommend you look up a guy called Dr. Ian Jordan of Jordan's Eyes. That man will blow your mind. I've got a presentation he did where he used different colors to treat different health ailments. It's fair to say the man's a wizard. Also this Institute of Physics one, which scared the hell out of me, because basically he was saying that, LED is a harsh source. It can affect your eyesight. It can thicken your lenses. It can do all sorts of stuff, but there's not enough research. And the bodies of research take decades to accumulate and give conclusive proof. And you think to yourself, well, car brake lights or street lights, for cars, no standards for them whatsoever. 5 years ago. So I bought a car and I remember driving it. It was a Kia. The guy behind me going, I can't see. Your lights are so bright. They're blinding me, because they weren't limited. They were taking out a 55-watt bulb and putting in an equivalent LED.
Exactly.
And it was just like, whoa. You could see all the streets and the houses lit up with red as you were driving along. It's not properly considered or looked at, because the energy usage on LED is not the same on LED as it is normal incandescent lamps. And nobody's really well, people are now. We now know that as part of that, the waveform that is the light spectrum, the LEDs emit a very harsh blue spectrum. Me and you for years have always never really liked LED, but we've always said rules of thumb: keep it cool, keep it warm, color temperature, don't have the optics. I don't want to see them. If I can see it's LED chips, I don't want to see that. I want my light bouncing around and being as naturally spread as possible and keeping it to a warm temperature. How many times have we seen companies where they've done warehouses? And do you remember once we were at an ILP event and a guy did a presentation? And this is a true story. He did a presentation of a project that he did, and he used like 6,500 or 7,000 K LEDs, and it looked, he said, and there's before and there's after. And me and you just looked at each other and went, it looked far fucking better before. Far better. It looks horrific, monstrous, with those bright, super white lights. And the thing is I have over the years become very, very light sensitive since I've been looking at LEDs. I wear blue tinted glasses and all the rest of it, but I do notice light quality is very, very important. Over the years, I've seen instances where people have become ill from lighting. It's made them ill, or they can see flicker, but others can't. Stroboscopic effects.
Can I just jump in there?
Yeah,
I mean, that's another issue. That's another issue I want to bring you about flicker. Amount of people. This is a major problem or issue in office lighting. Your 600 by 600 luminaires, LED. I would say probably 80% of the luminaires which are out in the offices up and down the country will have flicker, and people are starting to complain, having headaches. All of a sudden, their numbers are increasing on their reading glasses because of the light. Yes, our eyes are very adaptable to the way the lighting is. You get adapted to 6,000 K very, after 3 months, because, initially look really bright. But what they don't seem to understand, the damage is already starting to occur and no one's really doing much about it. So if you go anywhere up and down the country in any retail shop or offices, you'll see the flickering and this horrible 4,000 and upwards lighting, which sadly, contractors don't, contractors, it's not really their job. They're just being told to go and install something, and they'll just go and do it without really saying, well, sorry, mate, this doesn't really work. This should not be used for X and Y reasons. And that's the other problem that we have in our industry, that, contractors and a lot of, not even designers are pretty good. We're getting good designers understanding color temperature, but it is a lot of contractors who are just being told replace light with light, and they'll just go and buy any old thing over the shelf. And that's the downside. That's the downside.
Yeah, the like for like, give it to me cheap. Those clients need to be shot.
Exactly. I mean, that's the downside of the whole industry. If you remember, we went to that particular depot that we spoke about earlier, Paul, and the amount of different luminaires which were there, because the contractor just did all that contractor and the contractor after that and the one after that just kept on replace it, just bringing in whatever whatever's
Well,
been.
in all fairness, what generally happens in a lot of commercial and industrial is the contractor, that someone will say, there's a problem, go solve it. And the contractor will go, do you know what you want? And the client will go, no. So down to City Electrical Wholesalers he goes.
Exactly.
And that's it. He'll literally just go to Cities or Edmondson's or somewhere like that and just say, I need a light. It's got to be bright. It's for a warehouse. And they'll go, oh, take this 500 watt or 700 watt flood. That'll do. Just bolt it up. Oh yeah, that'll be good. No consideration for like diffusing the light. No consideration for actually having adjustable lenses so that you can actually direct it. And you're not, we have laws on dark skies. We have light pollution laws. We have all sorts of stuff. And yet I find it boils my piss when people go to Screwfix and they buy these tiny compact PIR activated floodlights, and they just throw light everywhere, and they just cause light pollution and a nuisance. I don't want 6,000 lumens shining through all my windows at 12 o'clock at night.
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of people over the years have rebelled against LED lighting, and a lot of people complain that it disrupted their sleep. There is research out there. I mean, I'm looking at a 2011 published journal and it was a 3-part in LED magazine. So in 2011, nearly 10 years ago, we were talking about 6 potential hazards of around photobiological safety from LEDs. And do you remember, I don't know if you were there or not, but there was an event where the technical director of DW Windsor, I'll never forget it, he stood up on stage and he said, LEDs are potentially the next asbestos. And I'd never heard a truer word said. And I think I was one of the few people who just went and gave a round of applause, because he just said something that needed to be said. And in my personal opinion, and it is my personal opinion, it's not the views of my employers or any institutes I'm a member of, LED, we absolutely jumped into the deep end and did not realise how deep it goddamn was. And we were able to paddle and pedal LED to every man and his dog, saying energy efficiency. But now so many clients are already having to replace, or they realise they've made a mistake. I've seen lights put up where the minute the lights have been changed to LED, all the residents have complained. Their sleep patterns have gone to hell. The relationships have been destroyed for people who put lights on buildings where there are domestic homes nearby, because it's not been thought, it's not been considered, but someone somewhere has charged a load of money and scarpered. And that's one of the biggest. The lighting industry needs to take far more responsibility and far more accountability for what they're doing. But you are bang on what you said. There are some awesome people in the lighting industry. There are some amazing designers. But the biggest problem is the construction industry, mate. You are the bottom of the bottom of the bottom of the toilet in the construction industry. I hate to say it, I don't mean to be rude, but you think of everything gets done with the ground clearance, the vegetation, the site setup, the underpinning, the basic civils, the structural package, the cladding packages, the doors, the building services fit out. And right at the very end of all of it is obviously M&E, but right at the end of M&E is always lighting. And then at the end of that, emergency lighting. And it's like you get the scraps. So if you want to do a compliant lighting design, you get more people focused. I've shit you not, it's a true story. I have been onto jobs where I've been in as the end user to the end client, not in my current employer and previous ones, where I've walked into a site cabin in the middle of Hertfordshire, and every single structural engineer, civil engineer, OLE engineer, signalling engineer is trying to kill the lighting designer and the M&E manager to do the minimum possible so that they can ensure that they get the extra money for their packages because they've screwed up on a design.
Well, funny you should. I'll give you another story. We went to see a client invited us to a site, and it was a social housing, Paul. And I'm walking through with my contractor, and to be honest with you, Paul, this was Grenfell Part 2. This estate was Grenfell Part 2. There was no emergency lighting. They had dustbins on the ground floor, no smoke alarms. The light fittings they used on all the communal area were just your normal bathroom fitting, the kind of fitting you'll see in any social housing. Exactly. Right. So
oh dear.
Right. And so I've turned around to the client and I said, look, none of this complies to the standards. If London Fire Brigade walked in there, they'll just have to shut the whole place down, and you'll have to house hundreds of people in hotels, and it'll cost you an arm and a leg. And you know, the excuse that I got from the client was, Paul, oh, we inherited this from the previous owners of the estate. We inherited this. So I said, so let me ask you a question to the client. If I sold you a car which was not roadworthy, and you went out and drove that car and killed someone, is your defense gonna be, well, I bought it from someone else, and you know, he said it was all right?
Yeah.
Isn't it isn't it your responsibility to do your due diligence? And even if you acquire that,
absolutely, there is if you're purchasing any sort of facilities management or land management acquisition, there is a legal obligation on you to do due diligence. Okay. Now, whether that goes down to the trouble is in some due diligence, there is always in any contract an assumed level of compliance. So let's just say hypothetically, I sold you the maintenance of my railway for X amount of millions of pounds per year. You would say, I will give you X amount of millions per year, but I assume there is a minimum level of compliance. And that way, if I hand you the keys, you don't turn and go, oh, hang on a minute, all of this needs to be done. All these tens of millions of pounds worth of work needs to be done. Why didn't you tell me? That's where the clauses of assumed compliance is. It's very handy, and for a lot of electricians listening, if you ever are quoting and pricing works, it's always worth having that fundamental caveat that we assume the installation has been inspected, tested, maintained to a reasonable standard. And you can quote like SFG 20 or whatever. Now that won't apply necessarily in a domestic home, but on commercial industrial, that's scary, to be honest with you, because the attitude for me, I've got a massive issue with the emergency lighting standards. So emergency lighting, for those who don't know, is you can kind of sum it up in, is it fair to say 3 standards? I'm pretty sure it's 3 standards. Yeah, 3 standards. So BS 5266, for instance, is your what I call your baseline standard, your system, your baseline system standard. Your BSEN 1838 is kind of how you apply that standard. So it's the bigger picture. And then you've got the product standard. So basic requirements, how you apply it as part of a bigger picture, and then the product standard, which is BSEN 60598-2-22. So that's all of your emergency lighting systems. Now there's a few others, 50EN 50171, central battery systems, etc. But these are the minimum standards. I said to a chap on the podcast the other day that he sits on the emergency lighting committee, and I said that committee needs to be seriously shook up, because when you start talking about half a lux or 1 lux, that's crap, man. That's rubbish. Now, from their perspective, keep it lean, keep it mean, keep it cheap. Don't cost clients and asset owners over a long period of time. But the trouble is people always work to the standards, not from the standards. And this is where the arguments come in. So if you look at a fire risk assessment, that fire risk assessment will determine, is there suitable means of evacuation of the premises? Is it adequately lit? If there's no emergency lighting, that fire risk assessor was completely incompetent or completely got hoodwinked with false records. And that is the problem. This is why the railways set their own standard of, I think it's 15 lux they set, because they knew they were going to get that anyway, and they designed the 1 in 4 principle, for railway stations. Every 4th one should give you sufficient evacuation lighting to escape. But each case must be assessed on its own merit, its own risks. And every industry seems to palm it off. So you go to a construction site, they'll assume the fire engineer has to do it, or nobody realizes the fire engineer has an input into the emergency lighting. But all of these different parts, like emergency lighting and fire, I've always said go together, because what they should organically just talk, so that the fire engineer backs up the lighting designer for an emergency lighting system that is compliant. And if you're having to argue over 1 lux, you've got so many problems. It's mind-blowing. So many problems. But that's the trouble. It's very difficult when you've got a minimum standard that low. If you said 5 lux in the standard, straight away it changed.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we sat down with the client just sat there with his hands in his palm of his head in his palm of his hands, thinking like, oh my God, what the hell have I got myself into? It's a good challenge.
That's a good challenge, though. In all fairness, I'd relish that sort of challenge, because that's I now have a risk that's so big it could cost us massively. I need to do some interventions. So he needs to be able to look at everything and go, what's my major risk? It could happen any day. is there any immediate quick wins? If there's short to medium term wins or interventions he needs to stage, he does. Once you have guilty knowledge, that's it.
Exactly. So what we said to him was, look, you need to report this out because none of this meets to the standards. It doesn't meet to, the current standards as far as emergency lighting is concerned. Smoke alarms is concerned. Even the wiring. I said, since Grenfell, your conduit has to be, in metal clips should be used and not plastic because the wiring intends to get tangled up, and that's how a lot of the fire brigade guys have lost their lives because of wiring just dropping straight off the ceiling onto them.
It's embarrassing. That in itself is embarrassing. The debates people have over it. For me, it's a non-debate. Period. It's a non-debate. You will take every reasonably practicable way of ensuring them clips don't fail during firefighting activities. Period. Simple as that. But it's the race to the bottom. It always goes to the cheapest a lot of the time. But yeah, you're bang on right. Fire clips really important. What do you think? Again, so there's obviously a lot of bad. What good points do you think that exist in the lighting industry?
Let's be what you said earlier, Paul, about everyone thought that LED was the best thing since sliced bread, and I think people are starting to realize that in my own industry, the people who are blowing the trumpet for LED, like you said, the guy from was it DW Windsor or was it the guy from and we're starting to understand. We're starting to, be honest, and people are starting to be honest about what LED is all about. And I think, just that itself, it makes a big, statement that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, but mind by pun, that we will improve, we'll get better, things will get better. LED's here to stay for a short period of time. I think even maybe another 4 or 5 years. But again, something better is going to be around the corner, which will, again, not create the health issues that LED has been creating in the last 5 to 10 years, honestly speaking, Paul. Give you one example. There's a local authority somewhere in America. They've used red LEDs in their street lanterns. And the effect it has on the whole environment is amazing. The red light.
That's the I think they call it red amber.
Yeah, red amber.
That's around 1600K, isn't it?
Yes.
So for those, my personal recommendation for LED lighting, regardless where it is now, is a maximum of 3000 Kelvin. The only place that we would have it higher is on a railway platform, where I think bright, clear colour rendering, that it's useful there. But everywhere else, back of house, you're only on a platform for short duration. So colour temperature, keep it bright, nice and white. Yeah, I don't mind that. But red amber, car parks, places near to where trees are, animals. I think that's very, very important. We don't know enough. We don't share enough about that. One of the good things I'm going to say about the lighting industry is the actual institute, the institute, the ILP, the Institute of Lighting Professionals. I genuinely think they are one of my, if not my favourite institute, because they are really nice people. They're human beings. They're really nice. They're kind. They're honest.
They are, yeah.
Such a decent bunch. And I've been to some amazing little events with them, and they're just a joy to be around. They're really nice. And a lot of lighting designers and people I speak to in there, they all have the same problems. The main contractor just wants cheap and cheerful, doesn't want to look at the bigger picture. The lighting industry gets dumped on from a great height. And in my opinion, the lighting industry also, parts of it, have dumped on others in their own industry. The one other thing I've noticed as well is the lighting industry, the manufacturing side of it, it's like a merry-go-round of jobs. We have met people at events, we've gone, hello, I don't know, let's say John, who are you working for this week? And one week they'll work for a major manufacturer, and next week, or the next month, oh no, that didn't work out, I'll set up on my own. And then 2 months later, I'm working for Abacus or one of the big companies. You're like, Jesus, is it just literally like a merry-go-round of jobs? That has always freaked me out, because I'm one of the few clients who engages with that institute. Main reason is so that I can understand what their motives are, understand their CPD that they offer, try and help myself and help others. As me and you have done over the years that we've known each other, I've tried to help you, and you've try to be honest and help me as well, which is a good thing. So yeah, I think the ILP, if for anyone listening, the ILP are a really, really good bunch of people, and I'd very recommend them if you're into lighting in any way, and it's a passion. For me, I liked lighting when I was in school, and that's why I've always kind of kept my toe in the water of the lighting industry. I've been very fortunate to do stuff. I'm also actually developing, well, when I finish it, it's already developed, but I've got to finish an emergency lighting training course for YouTube, which will eventually, hopefully, come this year. I'll do one which is kind of like a legal summary linking it to fire, but then I'm actually going to try and go through the standards and see if I can make people not fall asleep in a video about the emergency lighting standards. I'm not going to go into photobiological safety because that's just going to melt people's head, because it melted mine, still has. I've got enough stuff in my brain to do me a lifetime, in all fairness. But yeah, the ILP, they're really good. Any other positives you think in the industry? Otherwise, we'll jump.
You know what? I'll tell you. You know, you was talking about your station having higher than they can have higher than 3,000K. To be honest with you, Paul, I think sooner or later 3,000K will be on the stations as well, because the technology on the lumen per output on LEDs is getting even better. So if the lumen output goes up, you can bring the color temperature down even lower and still get your uniformity that you require. I mean, if you look at some of the uniformity on stations, it's pretty horrendous, and you're going to get the good uniformity and still have the lux levels that you require on your platforms. So I think, in that
fairness, I think the lighting industry. So I've said this at many a public presentation. I'll say it on this forum. The London Underground standard is very good. I personally prefer the DLR one because I wrote it, and it's a bit more practical. But it completely aligns with LUOs as well, because it's one family sort of thing. I've always thought that the Railway Safety and Standards Board, the Network Rail ones were weak, were poor, were not frequently updated. But I never really worried too much about their standards, because I would always work from the British standards and make sure that whatever I did was maintainable, replaceable, properly labelled up, easy to maintain. Everything was considered. Right, just on a quick note, 3 wishes. I want to end this on 3 wishes. If you had 3 wishes for the electrical lighting manufacturer and supplying industry, what would they be?
First one, I would say pricing. Everyone thinks if the bloody thing is expensive, that means it must be the best thing since sliced bread.
Price by weight, I've seen that before,
Right. So I want that to be disappeared. Secondly, my second wish would be clients having more input in what they want. I understand most of the clients are very busy doing other things, but it would be nice to have clients having a little bit more input in what kind of asset, when it comes to lighting, they want to put into.
Better client scopes, better client remits. Yeah. There's the trouble, what I've said to you before, a client may not know what they want. It's down to a ethical supplier manufacturer to sell them the best solution for what they want. Not about their profit margins. This is why I'll be honest with you, I'm not a big fan of certain roles and titles within the lighting industry, because I'm just not. But anyway, okay, that's a good one. What's your third?
Third one. That's the hard one now. The third one, which is
most people don't get to 3.
Third one. I think, you know what, Paul. If I know the Holy Grail was like everything. One light should fit every glove. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen, because every light has a different responsibility. So that it's a little bit difficult. You can't just have that. But I still think that if we need to, I'll tell you what it is. I'll tell you what the third one is. I think we need to really give British manufacturers at this given time a lot of helping hand, trust, rather than just looking at elsewhere and saying, well, we're going to get something that smells like I think the British manufacturers need to step up and have belief in themselves.
That's pretty good. So I'm going to tell you my 3 for the lighting industry. I would. Oh dear, this is going to be a tough one for me actually. So, if I had three wishes for the lighting supply manufacturer industry, one, be more upfront and honest. Come to us with assurance that the product you want to sell us is fully compliant, and you will by default teach us because we will trust you. We will take your evidence. We will go away and verify. So that's one. And I'm fed up with seeing manufacturers going, oh, what about this? Well, okay, have you got all of photobiological data? Have you got all of the photometry data? Has it been done by an independent accredited lab? And they just, if they can't answer that, it's pointless asking the questions. This is more for commercial industrial. Secondly, I would like to see luminaires manufactured far more for electricians because the instructions are crap that come with lights. And if I see another manufacturer put in their instructions, use red isolating tape over the breaker, I will consistently publicly out them because they're to me it's a national disgrace, and the HSE should prosecute them for being so stupid. And that's a company I don't want to do business with as well. So companies must give me assurance up front, really good, concise, clear information and good documents, and make it really easy for the electricians to understand what they're doing and how they're doing it because they're competent for the task. So if they go to a task and their bosses aren't assuring their competence, give them the information there, whether it be a QR code and a YouTube video, do you know what I mean? Or the right label saying this is where I'm fed from, etc. Help keep them safe and help their understanding. And my third one, I wish to God the lighting industry would stop this merry-go-round of people and focus more on undoing the mess that they've created with LED over the last 5 to 10 years. Because that lighting industry has made billions out of LED, and now they're going to have to start giving that back somehow because they need to. I'm just going to say they need to because it's a very deep and dark subject. And if anyone's listening in the lighting industry and you want to come on this, please do. Any physicists or gurus want to come on, please do. Do you know what I might do? I might write to Ian Jordan, actually, ask him to come on this.
What about Simon?
Simon. Ooh, yeah, that might be a good idea, actually. Yeah, do you know what? In fairness, we should give Simon a shout out. There are some campaigners on social media who've consistently challenged the safety and the ethics around the use of LED. And I remember when I was on First LinkedIn, these people were laughed at, character assassinated, and slandered. And boy, oh boy, oh boy, have everything they've said been predicted was absolutely bang on right. The day I heard that guy from DW Windsor say as LED is an ex-asbestos, I just thought, well, Simon was right. Simon was bang on right. And they're the people we should be giving the awards to, the ones who aren't afraid to put their head above the parapet and go, something wrong here. Don't worry. Let's fix it. Let's control. Let's manage it. Let's not be unrealistic. Let's be sensible about what we do. Let's create a common framework of these are what I want to see going forward. You know, we're never going to move away from LED. That's a given. But let's control LED better. Let's understand LED better. And I think the industries could all do more for that. But that's my 5 wishes there, probably. Right, Bidhen, I think that's it. We've spoken enough. Thank you very much for coming on. And you're either going to get lots of hate mail or inquiries, or if anyone likes this, we can always have you back on again to chat. In all fairness, we could probably spend 5 hours talking about war stories and the lighting industry and projects and stuff, because it's fair to say that even though we're apart every year or so, we always bounce back together and do some sort of thing together. And yeah, no, you're definitely one of the good ones. So thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you for this opportunity, mate.
Right. Okay. So I'm going to end this. So it's a normal ending. And until the next one, take care of yourself and each other. Bye-bye.